Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher natan et kol darkav, Lemo Yisrael ketavniot, Lekol hadevarim, Shebashamayim. Blessed are you, Lord our God, everlasting King, who has given all of his ways to his people Israel as pictures of all heavenly things. When I wrote this prayer, this is how manipulative I am. The last word, Shebashamayim, how many notes are in that?
6.
Shebashamayim. That's how we sing it. Shebashamayim. I did that on purpose to make it 7 because it's heavens. It's Judaism. You see? I did the same thing on Katavniot. Katavniot. I did the same thing. 7. So the Tavniot match heaven. The pictures match heaven. Isn't that cool? I thought you'd appreciate that. All right, there's no Torah portion this week because it was all the readings for Passover week. I've never said Passover week. I always say Hagamats week, but I'm going to start saying Passover week. It's too much trouble to go against the grain of everybody else. So I'm saying Passover week from now on. You know why? Because I read it in the Talmud. And they said, we just call it Passover to make it easy. So I'll do it too. So what we're going to talk about is what happened yesterday. Yesterday was the 7th day of Hagamats, of Passover. So that means today you can eat leaven again. So last night when the sun went down, we had
donuts.
We had donuts, like the biggest, swelliest bread you can think of, right? So I was like, no, it's tomorrow. Tonight and tomorrow, Shabbat is the 7th day. And they said, no, we checked 5 calendars, Dad. Okay, all right, well, thank you for doing your research. So anyway, it was yesterday. That was the 7th day of Hagamats. And this is how the Torah portion is set up of the Song of the Sea. It's written as big bricks over small bricks. In other words, staggered bricks. And I just found out, because I never knew, that is a picture of the mud that was on the floor of the sea after the waves parted. That it was cracked into like that, like bricks. Why? Because it's like a picture of the house falling down on the Egyptians, and it leaves all the bricks there. Get it? It's like God's going to bring that house down. That's why you did it like that, and that's why it's written like that. No. That's Exodus 15, the Song of the Sea. After they pass through the sea and they sing the song, that's the song. That's what it looks like. Exodus 15, 1-5. 1-5er. Now, I have these verses from Psalm 136 to enhance the Song of the Sea, because this is what we're going to talk about. This is what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about the parting of the sea is not the parting of the sea. The parting of the sea is prophetic of it's going to happen again. It's not going to be a real sea. It's not going to be, real walls of water on a real sea. All of this happened as a picture of what's going to happen in the day of the Lord. And it's very specific. And God gave many, many, many verses about it, that it's going to happen again in the day of the Lord. So that's what I'm going to talk about. Now, a few of these verses, Psalm 136, enhances this message. 13 through 15. To him who divided the Reed Sea into parts. Do you know how many parts it was divided into? Because in the movie it's 2.
12.
Right?
12.
Right. 12 parts. 1 for each tribe. Each tribe passed through separately with their own path. So it wasn't like in the movie where it's just parts. And it says this in Hebrew. It says paths, plural, derechot. There's also several other verses that say the same thing. When God split the sea in parts, plural. And all the rabbis say it was 12 parts, one for each tribe. Ki le'olam chasto, and allowed Israel to pass through the midst of it. Ki le'olam chasto, he overthrew Pharaoh and his army in the Reed Sea. Now here's the problem. The problem is, in the movie, what happens to Pharaoh in the movie? Does he go in the sea and drown? He goes back, and he sits on the throne, and he's all dejected because his son is dead. Okay, so I'm talking about 10 Commandments by Cecil B. DeMille, I'm sorry. So, some of the rabbis say, no, he was drowned in the Reed Sea, because the Bible says he was drowned in the Reed Sea. And some of the rabbis say, no, he survived. They're both true. They're both right. How's he going to come back in the day of the Lord if he doesn't survive? All the bad guys in the Bible, how many times do they die? So if he doesn't come back to life, how's he going to die again? Goliath died twice. Sisera died twice. Shaul, right? Shaul died twice. Judas died twice. Who else? Nobody knows? All the bad guys in the Bible. Haman, his 10 sons. There's a bunch of them. More, many more. All the bad guys in the Bible die twice. So half the rabbis say he lived. Half the rabbis say he died. They're both right. He didn't physically live. He died. But he lived spiritually so that the spirit that he was, that the Pharaoh was, will come back. And this is what the rabbis say. He's coming back in the day of the Lord. That's what we're going to look at. So, had all the rabbis said he died, we could not possibly have that picture set up for us saying he's coming back. Does that make sense? He's got to come back. Ki le'olam chasto. Now, this is Exodus 15. Moshe, this is the song. And by the way, 3 million people sang this song without it being taught to them. Because it says, and Moses and all Israel, Kol Yisrael, sang this song after they passed through the sea. How? They handed out, right, they had slides. So, it's an enormous miracle that everybody's saying, look how long it is. And they all sang these words without having been taught these words. Why? Because it's prophecy. And the Holy Spirit came on them, and they prophesied, saying, I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. The horse and its rider he has hurled into the sea. That's going to happen again. The horse and its rider is going to be hurled into the sea. The Lord is my strength and song. He has become my Yeshua. This is my God, and I will praise him. My Father's God, and I will exalt him. The Lord is a man of war. Yehovah is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and army he has thrown into the sea, and the best of his officers are drowned in the Reed Sea. The waters cover them. They went down into the depths like a stone. Your right hand, Lord, is majestic in power. Your right hand destroys the enemy. And in the greatness of your excellence, you overthrew those who rise up against you. You send out your burning anger to consume them like chaff. All right, did God send out burning anger to consume them like chaff? Or did he use water? Water. So it's obviously prophecy of what is going to happen in the future. Yes?
Could the fire also be like the fire that protected them on their travel?
No, because the fire that protected them is specifically the Shekhinah, which is God's protection, which is a female. This anger, is male, and it's directed specifically to the enemy.
Could it be the fire here?
No, because those are the makot, the plagues.
But is it the answer?
Yes.
Mine says set forth your fury, it consumes them like straw, which I thought was interesting
Yes, that is true, but there's something better. In Zechariah, it says that in the day of the Lord, that God's anger is going to come with Judah and burn up the enemy like straw. It specifically says that. So thank you for bringing that up. Your right hand is on his enemy, your right hand destroys the enemy. The greatness of your excellence you overthrew at the blast of your nostrils. Okay, at the blast of your nostrils, the waters piled up. The flowing waters stood like a heap. The depths congealed in the heart of the sea. The enemy said, I will pursue, overtake, divide the spoils, be satisfied against them. I will draw my sword, my hand will destroy. This is what the enemy was saying. I will draw my sword and destroy. So instead, God brings out his sword and destroys them. You blew with your wind, and the sea covered them. Remember, it said that a strong east wind came that night and parted the sea into how many parts? Right. So the wind magically parted the sea into 12 parts, and then he blew with his wind again, and it collapsed. I will pursue and destroy him. The sea covered them. They sank like lead in the mighty waters. Who is like you among the gods, Lord? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in praise, doing wonders? You reached out with your right hand. The earth swallowed them. Really? I thought the water swallowed them. What swallowed them? What swallowed them? Okay, who else got swallowed by the earth? Those two guys. Who? What's their names? No, Datan and Aviram. And they were swallowed by the earth. And 250 sons of Korah. Yes? Korah. So that was also people who died twice. If you go look at the passage, they also died twice. But you have to look carefully. So it's going to happen again. The earth is going to swallow them. In your faithfulness, you have led the people whom you have redeemed. In your strength, you have guided them to your holy habitation. I thought they just went across the Reed Sea to Arabia. But this says he took them to God's holy house. So what does that mean? That means, yeah, they were taken to the kingdom. So again, what it's saying is that it's going to happen in the future. Look to the future. That's where God's going to take his people, to God's holy habitation, the kingdom. And you're going to see this happen again, basically what it's saying. So he says, you took Israel to your holy habitation. The peoples have heard, they tremble. Now this is what we're going to focus on, this part that's emboldened. The peoples have heard, they tremble, anguish. Now the word for anguish is the same word as birth pangs, chil. There's two words for birth pangs we're going to look at. This is the one that's like writhing in birth pangs. Chil has gripped the inhabitants of Philistia. The chiefs of Edom, there's two. Trembling grips the leaders of Moab, 3. All the inhabitants of Canaan, 4, have despaired. Terror and dread fall on them. By the greatness of your arm, they are motionless as stone. Until your people pass over, I thought Passover was God passing over the houses. Yes? At Pesach? At Hagamats? At Hagamats, first day of Hagamats? No. The first day of Hagamats, God passed over. Last day of Hagamats, the Jews passed over the sea. Now, there is a huge debate as to when the Jews passed through the sea. The reason we're looking at this is because most of the Jews, and they have nothing that they base it on, there's like very little written about it. Most Jewish people say that the Jews passed through the Red Sea on the last day of Sukkot, the last day of Hagamats, yesterday. We know from Scripture and from all the patterns that God set up and all the scriptures that he gave that the Jews passed through the Red Sea on the 17th of Nisan, first fruits, Bikurim. Bikurim always falls on the first Sunday after Passover. But there's a huge machlochet, a huge argument in Judaism for the last 2,000 years of when Bikurim is. Is it the first day after the first day of Hagamats, which could be any day, or is it always on a Sunday? Most of Judaism has gone with the first, that it's just the first day after the first day of Hagamats, 16th of Nisan. But the priests used to keep the 17th, Sunday, always on a Sunday. Not always the 17th, but always on a Sunday. Now that happened this year. This year, it wasn't the 17th, but Sunday was the first day after the first day of Hagamats. Now that rarely happens, but it happened this year. So we sort of lucked out, as it were, and we were able to keep Bikurim on the Sunday. Doesn't always happen, but what we're doing is looking at the other side. We're looking at the other way to look at it, which most of Judaism does, which is the Jews passed through the Red Sea on the 7th day of Hagamats, the 21st of Nisan. So I know it's confusing, and I've never taught this before because we don't believe that the Jews passed through on the 21st. But just in case they did, that's why I'm going to teach this. I'm not saying I'm 100% right, so just in case they're right. And by the way, there's only 2 rabbis that said it out of hundreds that said that the Jews passed through on 21st of Nisan. One of them is Rashi. He doesn't say where he got it from. And there's another one. But from those 2 statements, all I would say of normative Judaism says that the Jews passed through on the 21st of Nisan. So, in case they're right, that's what we're going to look at. All right. Now, there are 10 songs in the Bible. I'm just going to go through this real fast. There are 10 songs in the Bible. Did you know that? Can you name any of them? Song of Moses in Deuteronomy, this Song of Moses and the Sea. Anybody else know any? Miriam's song is this one, Song of the Sea. Say, Song of Solomon is not a song. It's just called a song. Huh? Deborah, the Song of Deborah, good. Anybody else know any others? All right, you can go find them. So there's 10 of them in the Tanakh, 10 of them. But look at this statement about the 10 songs. It's awesome. There are 10 songs in the Tanakh. The 10th song, says the Midrash, will be the Shir Chadash, the new song. Now, it says, sing a new song to the Lord about 15 times in the Psalms and Proverbs and other passages, Isaiah, Zechariah, other passages. It says it a lot, but it never says what the song is. And it says, the Midrash says that the 10th song will be Shir Chadash, the new song of the ultimate redemption, a redemption that is global and absolute, a redemption that will annihilate all suffering, ignorance, jealousy, and hate from the face of the earth. A redemption of such proportions that the yearning it evokes and the joy it brings requires a new song. It's just so totally different and gigantic that we got to write a song about it. It's got to be a new song. In other words, there has to be new people. There has to be a completely new earth, a completely new people with the Spirit of God so they can sing the song. And that's what it's saying. That's what the redemption is. The first redemption at the passing of the Red Sea, passing through the Red Sea, was just a little picture of the final redemption. It's going to be so huge, a completely new musical vocabulary will have to be written to capture the voice of creation's ultimate striving. Isn't that awesome? It's got to be completely new for there to be this 10th song. Now, Revelation 5 and Revelation 14 tell us about the new song. Revelation 5 says, when he had taken the scroll, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each one with a harp and machtot, golden fire pans full of incense. And they sang a new song, the new song, saying, you purchased people for God with your blood from every tribe, language, people, and nation. And you have made them a kingdom and priests to our God, and they will reign on the earth. Now, where is that? Is that in heaven or on earth? It's in heaven. Yeah. This is in heaven, Revelation 5. They're in heaven. They're all coming together at Sukkot, by the way. And these angels start praising God, and then all the people who that have gone in the resurrection, that are in heaven, start praising too, with a new song. But now in Revelation 14, it comes to earth. Then I looked, and behold, the Lamb was standing on Mount Zion, and with him 444,000. These are people, these are Jews. I heard a voice from heaven, like the sound of many waters, like loud thunder, and they sang a new song. Where's this sound coming from? Heaven. So now it's coming from heaven down to earth. It doesn't mean that people are singing it on earth. It means it's coming down to earth, right? Then they're going to sing it. But first has to be a new heaven and a new earth. And that's a little bit later in Revelation. But they hear this song that's being sung in the kingdom before the throne and before the four living creatures and elders, and nobody was able to learn the song except the 144,000 who'd been purchased from the earth. So they're the only ones who can learn the song. Why? Because they're in the kingdom on earth. And they're the only ones who've been redeemed. Everybody else is just destroyed like Pharaoh and his army in the sea. So we are clearly in the day of the Lord. Once you're in Revelation, remember, you're in the birth pangs in the day of the Lord. And so now they hear this new song from heaven. And then later on, all the world's going to sing it. All right, so let's talk about the subject at hand. The subject at hand is that the Exodus was a picture of the future Exodus. The Exodus was a picture of the future redemption. Redemption back then, it's going to happen exactly the same way, redemption in the future. All right, so we're going to look first at the birth pangs. After we look at the birth pangs, we're going to then look at the Pharaoh being killed in the water as a picture of what's going to happen in the future. Psalm 77. The waters saw you, God, the waters saw you. They were in anguish. What waters saw? The Reed Sea. And they are in anguish, in chil, like birth pangs. They're like birth pangs. Mechil is what it says in Hebrew. Like anguish, like birth pangs. The ocean depths also trembled. The clouds poured water. The skies sounded out. Your arrows flashed here and there. The sound of your thunder like a wheel. The lightning lit up the world. The earth trembled and shook. Your way was in the sea, and your paths, this means God's walking through the waters. And your heels is what it says in Hebrew. Ekev is heel, like Jacob. Ekev, heel. Were not seen or not known. In other words, you couldn't see him walking, but he's walking. You led your people like a flock by the hand of Moshe and Aaron. This is definitely talking about the Reed Sea, right? Because it's Moses and Aaron leading them, yes? Would you agree? Okay, so the waters that are in birth pangs are the Reed Sea. What does that tell us about the Reed Sea redemption? That it's going to be again in the birth pangs. It's a picture of the birth pangs. Yes?
Could the waters also be the Gentiles?
In this case, the waters are not the Gentiles. The waters are the redemption that the Jews passed through. We'll keep going. Micah chapter 4. Now, the reason I have Micah chapter 4 is to show you chil, the word chil, that it very definitely is the birth pangs. Now, why do you cry out loudly? Is there no king among you, or has your counselor perished? That anguish, chil, has gripped you like a woman in childbirth? Be in anguish, be in chil, and scream, daughter of Zion, like a woman in childbirth. So, this is what's being quoted, one of the verses being quoted in Revelation 14. Revelation 12. When it talks about Israel going into birth pangs to give birth to the male child, which is Messiah. So what do we see here? We see that the Reed Sea equals, it is equated to, it's synonymous with birth pangs. Isaiah 43, He who makes a way through the sea and a path through the mighty waters, who brings out the chariot and the horse, the army and the mighty man. They will lie down together and not rise again. Not rise again. But they're going to rise again in the day of the Lord. So when it says they're not going to rise again, what is it saying? They're not going to be part of what? The resurrection in the day of the Lord. That's exactly right. They're going to be destroyed forever. No resurrection for them. So the people, the armies, the horses, the chariots, the people of Egypt are a picture of all the earth's people that will not go in the resurrection. They're the wicked, the Rashim. Make sense? Okay, I'm walking us through as carefully as I can. So if you get lost, raise your hand and say, I don't get it. Okay? Not rise again. They've been extinguished. They're going to go out like a wick. So the Egyptians are a picture of, equated to the dead, those who have no resurrection. Isaiah 51, this is one of my favorite verses. Awake, wake, put on strength, O arm of the Lord. Awake as in the days of old. As in the days of old. As in the days of old. So what does that tell us is going to happen? The arm is going to come again, right? Come again, just like you did in days of old. And then he's going to describe what happened in days of old with the arm of the Lord. Are you with me? Okay. As in the days of old, the generations of long ago, wasn't it you who cut Rahav in pieces? Now, Rahav means arrogant, prideful person. Rahav in pieces, who pierced the dragon. Now, dragon in Hebrew is tanin, and we're going to come across this word several times. Who pierced the dragon. Now, hold on. The arm of the Lord pierced the dragon and cut Rahav in pieces? When? How? In days of old? Wasn't it you who dried up the sea? There's the answer. There's the answer. Wasn't it you who dried up the sea into 12 paths? So therefore, what was in the sea? Rahav or the dragon. Good. Rahav, dragon. Well, who is that? Pharaoh. Pharaoh is Rahav. Pharaoh is the dragon. I mean, you probably know the word dragon from Revelation, right? Yes? Okay, that's what you're thinking about, I think. Okay, good, because we're going to get there. It's going to explain Revelation to you. This is what it's quoting when it talks about the dragon. One of the verses that it's quoting, only one. Who pierced the dragon, the Tanin? Wasn't it you who dried up the sea, the waters of the great deep, who made the depths of the sea a pathway for the redeemed to cross over? And the redeemed of the Lord will, future. So now he says, just like in days of old, when the arm of the Lord split the sea and killed Pharaoh and all of his evil people, it's going to happen again. And it's going to happen in the Chil, in the Chevlei HaMashiach, the birth pangs of Messiah. The redeemed of the Lord will return and come to Zion with joyful shouts, and everlasting joy will be on their head. Isn't that a weird thing to tack onto the arm of the Lord cutting a dragon in pieces? Isn't that strange? But that's what it's all about, the redemption. So I have the picture of our Tyrannosaurus Pharaoh, Tyrannosaurus Rex Pharaoh, beast in the day of the Lord. That's him. I'm going to show you another picture of him. So we have Pharaoh equals Rahav equals now the dragon, the Tanin. Ezekiel 29. Son of man, set your face against Paro, against Egypt. Set your face against Paro, king of Egypt, and prophesy against him and all of Egypt. So whatever this says is not just against Pharaoh. It's against Egypt, all of Egypt. Whatever this is about Egypt. Behold, I'm against you, Paro, king of Egypt, Hatanin Hagadol, the great dragon. Can it be any clearer who the dragon is? It's Pharaoh. It's Pharaoh in the day of the Lord. The new Pharaoh. That spirit, right? The great monster, the great Tannin, dragon, that lies in the midst of his rivers, that has said, now this is weird. We were watching a program last night, and it said, it had a picture of the Nile, like video of the Nile flying over it, and it said, the Nile is the longest river in the world. I thought the Amazon was. But it says, if you count all the tributaries and stuff, that the Nile is the longest river in the world. And it's huge. I mean, it's really, really wide. It ain't like the Rio Grande. It's gigantic. And but this is weird. What the Pharaoh says, he says, my Nile is mine. I made it. Wow. What pride. My Nile is mine. I'm the one who made the Nile. I mean, it's just like insanity. So God says, I'm going to put hooks in your jaws and make the fish of your rivers cling to your scales. Remember that phrase, hooks in your jaws. And make the fish of your rivers cling to your scales. I'll bring you up out of the midst of your rivers, and all the fish of your rivers will cling to your scales. You're going to fall on the open field I've given you for food to the animals of the earth and to the birds of the sky. Just as a little aside, does anybody know what the time period when that happens, what it's called? When all the people of Egypt are thrown onto the open field to become food for the beasts and the birds. Anybody know what that's called? What's it called? No. No? Well, you're saying the supper of the great God, I think. Is that what you're saying? Yes, it is called that, but everybody in the world calls it something. It's real simple. Armageddon. Har Megiddo. Armageddon. The valley of Megiddo. Armageddon. That's when that happens. Yes, it is the supper of God. You're correct. But that's what most people call it, is Armageddon. That specific battle is what it's referring to here. And who's he going to do this to? Pharaoh. Egypt. The dragon. And now we're told synonymous with that is the Nile, the river itself. So Nile, if you read in the Bible the word Nile, who is it? The false Messiah, the Pharaoh, right? The false Messiah. Yep. Zechariah 10 through 11. I will bring them back from the land of Egypt and gather them from Assyria. I will bring them into the land of Gilad and Lebanon until no room can be found for them. Talking about bringing the Jews back from Assyria and Egypt. And trouble, Sarah. Now this is the other word for birth pangs. Chil and Sarah. Sarah, in Judaism, people say, oh, I've got such tsuris. That's this word, sarat. I've got such tsuris. I've got such problems. I've got such trouble. They're saying tribulation. That's the word for tribulation. I've got such tsuris. And trouble, Sarah, will pass through the sea. What? Sarah will pass through the sea? Why? To put the sea in the tzara. What's the tzara? The birth pangs. To put the sea, like to get the sea and stick it into the birth pangs so you can see this is going to happen again in the day of the Lord. Isn't that simple? So tzara, trouble, is going to pass through the sea, and he'll strike the waves in the sea. So all the depths of the Nile, the Jews didn't pass through the Nile. What'd they pass through? The Reed Sea. But here it says, God's going to strike the Nile. Who's the Nile? Pharaoh. The false Messiah. The beast. The dragon. Right? So, I'm going to strike the Nile. It'll dry up, and the pride of Assyria will be brought low, and the scepter of Egypt will depart. Now, we've got a few things to pick apart here. Thankfully, the rabbis did it for us. Rashi says, and trouble will pass through the sea. And the trouble shall pass through Tyre. What? Tyre? Tyre's up in Lebanon. The Red Sea's down in Egypt, like next to Arabia. Yeah? In between Egypt and Arabia. Why would his mind immediately jump way, way, way north to Lebanon, Tyre, Tzor? That's why. That's how you say Tyre in Hebrew. Listen. Tzor. Tzor. So I've got such tsaurus. It's the same word. And then he backs it up with Scripture. So his mind says, trouble will pass through Tzor, Tyre, which is situated in the midst of the sea. And this is clearly true. I don't know if you know about Tyre, but it was a mile offshore. And when it was built, they built an island. Now this happened 3,500 years ago. They literally built an island. And then they built Tyre, Tzor, on top of it. And there was a causeway that was built during the time of Babylon, a causeway that went from Tzor all the way to the mainland. Now, before there was a causeway, they had to take a boat to get to the mainland and take a boat to get out to Tzor. Guess who destroyed that causeway and destroyed the city of Tyre? Right, very good, Alexander. But up until that time, Tyre was it. Tyre was the greatest, most horrible place. It was full of sin, full of money, and full of pride. And if you have scriptures, let's go to Ezekiel 27. Are my glasses in that box, Doug? Can you see? Por favor. Ezekiel 27. People reading this, they know it's about Hasatan. Okay, thank you. They know it's about Hasatan. I'm going to try. I don't know if I can read it, but I'm going to try. Ezekiel 27. Moreover, the word of the Lord came to me saying, and you, son of man, take up a lamentation against Tzor, against Tyre, and say to Tyre, who dwells at the entrance to the sea, at the mouth of the sea. Can't read the next word. Can anybody see it? Say it again. Thank you. Merchant of the peoples to many coastlands. Ooh, coastlands. You guys know who the coastlands are? The Greeks. The Greeks. Hellenism. Merchant to the Greeks. Thus says the Lord, O Tyre, you have said, I am perfect in beauty. Your borders are in the heart of the sea. Your builders have perfected your beauty. They have, I can't read it. They've made all your planks. All right, so it starts describing the place, right? Then if you come down to verse, it describes it like a ship. It describes planks and canopies and all that stuff on a ship. That Tyre is a ship because it's in the middle of the sea. I can't see it. So if you keep reading, it gets down to a description of him being perfect in beauty in Eden. And that he said, I'm perfect. Can anybody tell me what verse that is? Because I can't see. No? Okay. I can't see it. You got to help me. I'm sorry, what? Verse 4? I thought it was later than that. I just can't see. This is awful. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. All right, look in verse It goes through a list of all the Gentile nations that joined with this Tyre. And then
Are you in Ezekiel?
Ezekiel 27. And then at the end of 27, it's described all these Gentile nations, and then it gets to chapter 28. The word of the Lord came again, Son of man, say to the leader of Tyre, Sor, because your heart is lifted up, and you said, I am God. I sit in the seat of God, in the heart of the seas. Yet you're a man, you're not God, although you make your heart like the heart of God. Look, you're wiser than Daniel. There's no secret that's a match for you. By your wisdom and understanding, you've acquired riches for yourself. This is talking about Hasatan. Look at verse 7. Therefore, I will bring strangers on you, the most ruthless of the nations, and they'll draw their swords against the beauty of your wisdom and defile your splendor. They will bring you down to the pit, and you'll die the death of those who are slain in the heart of the seas. Look at verse 12. Take up a lamentation again. This is the third time he said, take up a lamentation or take up a word against Tyre, king of Tyre. Say to him, thus says the Lord, you had the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Who's this talking to? The king of Tyre. It's talking, the king of Tyre? So, now, Rashi says all this like this. He's just like, puts it all together, assembles it real fast. You want these back? So he assembles this real fast, and this is what he says. He says this. He says, Tyre, the king of Tyre, is the king of Egypt. It's Hasatan. So he puts the clues together, and he says, trouble shall pass through the sea, and the trouble shall pass through Tyre, which is situated in the midst of the sea. It is, and now he adds something else. It's the head of Edom. What? Why does he bring Edom in now? Isn't that weird? And then he explains it. And he shall strike. It says in the verse, the Holy One, blessed be he, who is the one who strikes the waves of the sea to sink Tyre. And then it says, all the depths of the river, that is Egypt. So what he's doing is he's equating Edom. Who is Edom? Rome. Remember it said in the verse that you were the one who gave all the money to Greece, the islands. And that's what he's saying. He's saying, you want to know who the head of Edom is? It's the same one who's the head of Tyre. It's the same one who's the head of Egypt. It's Hasatan. That's what he's saying. And God is going to trouble him in the day of the Lord. That's what he's saying. So now we have the Nile equals Egypt equals the birth pangs, trouble. The guy's name is trouble, Sor. Now we have trouble, Tyre, Sor. And now we have Edom, Esav. They're all the same. They're all synonymous. You know, I've been telling you for years now that Edom is the bad guy. The only guy in the whole Bible where God says, Edom I hated, or Esav I hated. All right, you had a question? False Messiah, yeah. He is that. I don't know where he's coming from. He could come from Mexico for all I know. It doesn't matter. But he is that. He is the head of Egypt. It doesn't tell us where he comes from. It just tells us who to look at as a picture of him. So now what we're doing is we're laying the pattern on the pattern on the pattern on the pattern on the pattern, and they all line up. They're all the same pattern. But you have to know it from the scriptures. Don't look at the news. Don't look at the earth. Don't look at the world. Look at the scriptures to figure out this spirit and who this is. Do not try to figure out who he is on the earth. It doesn't work. People have been doing that for 2,000 years. It's never worked once. So the Nile is synonymous with Egypt, which is synonymous with the birth pangs, which is synonymous with Tyre, which is synonymous with Edom. That's a lot of clues, isn't it? And he got that from this passage. Reading Zechariah 10, would you have gotten that? I sure wouldn't have gotten that. Habakkuk 3, I love this passage too. I only have part of it here. God came, past tense, from Teman. Now Teman is in Esav. It's in Esau. It's in Edom. It's one of the mountains of Edom. Actually, it's the biggest mountain of Edom. So you see Teman, Mount Teman in the Bible, or the region of Teman, you are talking about Edom, Esau, the bad guy. The Holy One from Mount Paran. Mount Paran is in Edom. His glory covered the heavens. Before him went pestilence and burning coals at his feet. I saw the tents of Cushan, the land of Midian, trembling, just like we saw in Exodus 15, the Song of the Sea. Remember? When they passed through, Midian trembled, and Esau trembled, and Canaanites trembled, and Philistia trembled, remember? And they were all freaking out because it's the birth pangs. Well, the same thing happens here. Midian is trembling. Was the Lord angry with the rivers? Was he against the sea? Now look at this, that you, God, rode on horses and your chariot of salvation. What was God's chariot made out of? Huh? Say it loud. Say it loud. Fire. His chariot's made of fire, yes? How do you know that? Where does it say so? What story? Elijah. When Eliyahu's taken up, right? He looks and he sees horses and chariot of fire. Nobody ever talks about the horses of fire. Well, here it is. He said, you're going through the sea, and they're following your chariot and your horses. Right. What are they made out of? Fire. Where is it? In water. Yes? Remember? No, it's not the Shekhinah. Remember at... Oh, very good. The Shemayim, the heavens, because heavens are made of water. Very good. And that's where God's... He basically took all that and brought it down. There's something else I would say, but I'm not going to go there. It's too much. It's too big. It's too amazing. So they saw his chariots and his horses of fire. You split the earth with rivers. Your fury, with wrath you trample Gentiles. Did he trample Gentiles when the Jews passed through the sea? No, he did not. No, he did not. He destroyed Pharaoh and his army. They were Gentiles, but they are not Gentiles. Goyim, plural, nations. So obviously this is talking about the future. It's not talking about the past, yes? How did it start? God came from Teman, from Esau, the Holy One. So this is talking about what the church calls the coming of Christ, which they shouldn't, but they do. When God comes back to earth, he comes from destroying Edom. And then he comes to Jerusalem. So this is about the future, even though it says it in past tense. God came from Teman. No, God's going to come from Teman. You split the earth with fury, with wrath you trample nations, plural. You went forth to save your people, to save your anointed. You crushed the head of the house of wicked. Whoa! You crushed the head of the house of the wicked. Who's the head of the house of the wicked? Hasatan. By laying it bare. Now this is really descriptive. By laying him bare from foundation to neck, cutting him open and splitting him open with his sword. Isn't that descriptive? You walked through the sea with your horses. There it is again. Remember it said your heels went through the sea, but nobody could see it. There it is again. You walked through the sea with your horses. When I heard, my belly trembled in myself. He's in birth pangs. That I should rest. Now look at this. This is really weird. That I should rest is destined for a day of trouble. When is the day of trouble? Day of the Lord. What's another word for the day of the Lord? What's another word for the day of the Lord? Birth pangs. What else? Say it louder. The Sabbath. What else? Day of rest. What else? Ugh. Come on, guys. Day of rest, Sabbath. Keep going. Seventh day. Come on. Say the good ones. Say the good ones, not the bad ones, the good ones. Kingdom. Thank you. The kingdom. And Yom Shekelo Shabbat, the day that is all of its Sabbath. That I should rest is destined for the day of trouble. The day of trouble is in the day of rest. It's the first 7 years of the day of rest. They are at the same time. The church has taught for 2,000 years just about that the day of trouble is before the kingdom. It is not before the kingdom. The day of rest and the kingdom are at the same time. Sorry, the day of rest and the birth pangs or the day of trouble is at the same time. Isn't that strange? That I should rest is destined for a day of trouble. And it says in Hebrew, Yom Tzara, day of Tzara, day of trouble. When he comes, he will invade with his truth. So now, troops. So now we have more clues. We have the coming of God equals Teman, or Esav, which equals the sea. What sea? The Reed Sea. And what river? The Nile. Good. And it equals also the head of the house of the wicked. They're all synonymous. Isn't that amazing? The head of the house of the wicked. I never saw that before. You know, at Rosh Hashanah, everybody's divided into the wicked and the righteous. The righteous are the tzedakah, the wicked are the rashim. This is the head of the whole house of the rashim. It's Hasatan. It is also synonymous with the day of trouble, the birth pangs. So these are the clues we have. The Reed Sea equals the birth pangs. Then we had Egyptians equals the dead, those who will not be resurrected, or the wicked. Then we have the Pharaoh equals Rahav, which equals the dragon. Then we have the Pharaoh equals Egypt, which equals the dragon, and equals the Nile. Then we have the Nile equals Egypt and trouble, birth pangs, which equals Tyr or Tzor, and equals Edom, Esav. And then we have the big one, the coming of God equals Esav, equals the sea and the rivers, equals the head of the house of the wicked, equals the birth pangs. Now, have you got enough clues here to put them all together? Yes? No? Sure. Can you put all these together into one pattern? Yes? Please respond to me. Yes. Robert, please respond. Yes, sir. All right, fabulous. I just got to know if I'm getting it across, and there's no way I can tell unless you tell me. Now, look at this picture down at the bottom. This is from a Haggadah that I have that was produced and printed in 1932, I believe, in Israel. That is a picture, an engraving that says Vahaya. It's one of the beginnings of the prayers in the Haggadah. This is from a Haggadah about Passover. Can you tell what's happening here? Who's cutting off the head of the dragon? What is that thing that's holding the sword? Right, the hand of the Lord, or the arm, the Zeroah. So this is the Zeroah, the arm of the Lord, with the sword, chopping off the head of Leviathan, or Leviathan. Just like we read in Isaiah. Was it not you who pierced, who cut off the heads of the dragon, and you pierced Rahav? Remember? This is what this is talking about. And that's what Passover is about. But Passover is about the king of Egypt, the Pharaoh. Therefore, the Pharaoh is the dragon, Leviathan. So that's what we're going to look at now. Leviathan. Job 41 is all about Leviathan, and it's unfortunately translated crocodile. This is a horrible, horrible mistake. By the way, Rashi translates it crocodile. But then he goes on to talk about it prophetically. So a Jew calling it a crocodile, he knows it's a picture. Gentiles calling it a crocodile, they probably don't know it as a picture of the false Messiah, but Rashi did. So it's fortunate that it says crocodile, but it does. Job 41. Can you drag out Leviathan with a fish hook? Whoa, what? Didn't we see that before? About the hooks? Where was that? What did it say? Right, when it said, I'm going to stick a hook in your jaw, Pharaoh, who said, my Nile is mine. I'm going to pull you up out of the river, right? And all the fish will cling to your scales. Yes? So here it is. Here's Job 41. It says exactly the same thing. Can you drag out Leviathan with a fish hook? Don't picture a fish hook. Picture a fish hook. Okay? Picture a giant fish hook, like one bigger than first shark. So, what's the answer? Can you? Can you stick a hook and pull up Leviathan from the river? Can you? Can a human do that? No, but God will. And that's the point of the whole passage. Every one of the questions it's asked, it's like, no, but God will. And he's going to say another one. Will he make a covenant with you? He being Leviathan.
No.
Yes, he will. Here, I'll put it in Christian terms so you can remember. The Antichrist is going to make I can't even remember how they said it. Right. The Antichrist is going to make a covenant with the Jews for 7 years. Well, that's where this comes from. It's bad wording, but it's true. He, the false Messiah, is going to make a covenant, a brit, with Israel, and then break it and try to kill them all. But Israel can't make a covenant with Leviathan, but God can. And that covenant's going to be a covenant of death. His strong scales are his pride. Surrounded with tsar, and that's what it says in Hebrew. His scales are surrounded with tsar, with birth pangs. Where is he? Where do you find this critter? In the water. And in the water, he's surrounded by tribulation. Look. And trouble will pass through the sea. Tsur, trouble, birth pangs is going to be in that river. And so that's why it says, this is basically saying the same thing. His scales are his pride. And what surrounds all that pride? The birth pangs, the tsur, the tsar. One scale is so close to another that no ruach can come between them. He allows no spirit in, none. Does that make sense? He allows no spirit in. His heart is as hard as a rock, as hard as a lower millstone. Nothing on earth is like him. One made completely without fear. No fear of God, no fear of man, no fear of anything. Because he looks on everything that is high. He is king over all the sons of pride. Nebuchadnezzar, Haman, Pharaoh, Goliath, just name a bad guy. Judas, name a bad guy. Judah. He's their king. He is their king. He's full of pride. He is nothing but pride. Psalm 74 says, you divided the sea by your strength. You broke the heads, plural, of the sea monsters, Taninim, in the waters. You crushed the heads, plural, of Leviathan. You gave him as food to the people of the wilderness. Has that happened yet? Nope. It's going to happen in the birth pangs. Isaiah 27, in that day the Lord will punish Leviathan, the straight serpent. Now what it says is bar-like in Hebrew. It's bad translation in English. I think it says fleeing serpent. It doesn't say that in Hebrew, it says bar-like, straight. The straight serpent, straight Nachash, with his fierce and great and mighty sword, even Leviathan, the coiled serpent. So one time he's straight, one time he's coiled. And he will kill the Tanin who lives in the sea. So now he's called a dragon, he's called Leviathan, he's in the sea. Now this is Rashi talking. He says, he will kill the dragon that is in the sea. That is Tyr. There it is again. That is Tyr, Tzor. That is the head of the children of Esav. It is situated in the heart of the sea. And so Kittim are called the islands of the sea, and they are Rome, the Romans, according to certain manuscripts. Some manuscripts say they are the Greeks. So you see what's happening here? I don't know how to say this to make it make sense. Who is the head of all Hellenism? Hasatan. When the false Messiah comes, he can't be anything but Hellenism incarnate. And everybody's going to love him because of it, especially believers. Because Hellenism has invaded the church to such a level that it's impossible to even pick the threads apart to see what's going on, and like where things came from and where they started and how they developed and how they went bad. It's not enough to just go, well, they do Christmas and Easter. Who cares? Hellenism has invaded like a sponge, like getting a sponge and sticking it in a vat of water and just squishing it till it just goes everywhere, completely, thoroughly gets into that sponge. That's what the church is like. It's just reality. This is reality. Doesn't make them bad, doesn't make them sinners, doesn't make them deceived. You all were in that. So what? So what? The trick is to learn something else. That's all. Just learn something different. And as the more you learn, hopefully what happens is you squeeze that sponge and the Hellenism comes out. A little bit at a time, a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. And it goes out and it goes out and it goes out until you got something else in the sponge, which is the way God set things up. But it takes a long time and it takes a lot of work. So this guy, this false Messiah, is going to be all about Hellenism, all about Greek and Roman things. In that day, the Lord will punish Leviathan. Now, Leviathan is king over all the sons of what? Oh, boy. Leviathan is king over all the sons of what? Okay. So, whether you can see it or not, or whether you can feel it or not, all of that Hellenism stuff, it all comes from pride. It's all about self. It's all about me, 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 me. We've all been in it, so, big deal. So the trick is to try to, a little bit at a time, get rid of as much as you can, whenever you see it, of Hellenism. It's all motivated by pride, every bit of it. And it's in every misunderstanding of Scripture. It's in every misunderstanding of the times of God, all of it. It's all about pride. So, there is a root that you can kind of distill down to something simple. It's ge'avah, pride. And we're all heir to it. That's why we need a Redeemer. That's why we need a second redemption. First one didn't work. Too good. Not because of God, because of us. It didn't work. The whole world is completely filled with Hellenism. Completely saturated. So there must be a second redemption. And so God shows us all these patterns and says, look to the future, I'm going to do it again, just like I did before. Isaiah 51, awake, awake, put on strength, O arm of the Lord, awake as in days of old. What? As in days of old, just like when God split the sea. The generations of long ago, was it not you who cut Rahav in pieces, who pierced the dragon? Now, Revelation 12. Now it should make sense. Then another sign appeared in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon. How would you say that in Hebrew? Oh, yeah, the red, you'd say Edom. A tanin gadol Edom. Edom. A huge tanin, monster, in its rivers, that's Edom. Does that make sense? And it just, we're supposed to, when we read this, we're supposed to know these clues. That's how deep this stuff is. Another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a tanin gadol Edom, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his heads were 7 crowns. And his tail swept away 1/3 of the stars of heaven and hurled them to the earth. Just as a little aside, this hasn't happened yet. Hasatan has not thrown 1/3 of the angels to earth in a fight in heaven. This has not happened. That's not where demons came from. Demons are created beings, created spirits. This is going to happen in the middle of the birth pangs, as an aside. And the dragon stood before the woman. Who's the woman? Who's the woman? Israel. So the dragon, the Tanin, Edom, Pharaoh, all his other names, is standing before Israel so that when she gives birth to the Messiah, he can eat up the child. This is in the day of the Lord. Revelation 20, and he took hold of the dragon, the Tanin, the serpent. How do you say serpent? Remember? Nachash, good. The Nachash, the Tanin, the Nachash. Took hold of the dragon, the serpent, the Tanin, the Nachash, who is the devil and Hasatan, and bound him for 1,000 years. So now we're at the end of the book of Revelation, almost, and Hasatan is then bound for the rest of the kingdom. All right, now you know why God redeemed us by bringing us through the Reed Sea. Because he's going to do it again. So here's a song of the sea. Now when you read it, it should make sense. Prophetically, I hope, if I did my job. You should be able to see it. The horse and its rider. Who's the horse? No. It's the bad guys. Who's the horse? Egypt. And the rider. Who's the rider? Pharaoh. He is hurled into the sea. What's the sea? Good. Birth pangs. Thank you. The Lord is my strength and song. God has become my Yeshua. God has become my Yeshua. I love that. Not just become my salvation, become Yeshua. Pharaoh's chariots and army he has thrown into the birth pangs. They went down into the depths like a rock. Why like a rock? Because that's how hard Leviathan's heart is. And he lives in the rivers. He lives in the sea.
Is it also like the millstone?
Yes, it is like the millstone. It is the millstone. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. You send out your burning anger to consume them like chaff. The flowing waters stood like a heap. The depths congealed in the heart of the sea. They sank like lead in the mighty waters. You've led the people whom you have redeemed in your strength. You've guided them to your kingdom. The peoples have heard. They go into birth pangs. Philistia, the chiefs of Edom. The chiefs of Edom were terrified. Trembling grips Moab. All of Canaan have despaired. Terror and dread fall on them by the greatness of your Zoroah. They are motionless as a stone until your people pass over. God passed over us. Now we pass through the sea and pass over. You will bring and plant them in the mountain of your inheritance. What is the mountain of God's inheritance? The kingdom, the kingdom, the kingdom. Pass through the birth pangs until you come to the good part of the kingdom. Yes? Got to go through the birth pangs, though. Without anything hurting us. Got to go through the birth pangs to get to the kingdom. your people pass over, your inheritance, to the mountain of your inheritance, the place which you have made as your dwelling, the sanctuary which your hands have established. The Lord shall reign forever and ever. Let's stand. So hopefully, now you can see this is prophetic, this song, yeah? So picture all of Israel singing this song in the kingdom. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. Oh, give thanks to the God of gods. Oh, give thanks to the Lord of lords. Odula Adonai Kito, Odula Adonai, Odula Adonai Kito, Kile Olam Chasto, Odula Adonai Kito, Odula Adonai, Odula Adonai Kito. Covered the sea with land. Odula Adonai Kito, Odula Adonai, Odula Adonai Kito, Kile Olam Chasto, Kile Olam Chasto. To him who made the heavenly lights, sun by day and the moon by night. To him who made the cycles of time. Odula Adonai Kito, Odula Adonai, Odula Adonai Kito. Kile Olam Chasto, Kile Olam Chasto. Him who visits his chosen ones, to him who saved us by his son. That Israel give thanks to the Holy One. Odula Adonai Kito, Odula Adonai, Odula Adonai Kito. Kile Olam Chasto, Odula Adonai Kito, Odula Adonai, Odula Adonai Kito, Kile Olam Chasto, Kile Olam Chasto, Kile Olam Chasto. Thank you, Abba. We look forward to the second redemption. Let's do Kiddush.